In this video, I want to talk a little bit about a recent news event, the demise of the Pac-12. I think there are some important sales lessons and business and leadership lessons which can be taken from this live case study that we've seen play out in the news over the last couple of weeks. And I'm going to focus especially on the sales aspect of it. And let me just give you a little bit of background. For those of you who don't follow college athletics, the Pac-12 is an athletic conference. And you don't have to go back too far, maybe 15 or 20 years. And the Pac-12 was probably considered one of the most prestigious athletic conferences in college sports in the United States. In fact, the Pac-12 has about a 100-year history. So this is a prestigious, well-known institution. And just in the last couple of weeks, it has completely fallen apart. The 12 member schools that made up the Pac-12, 8 of them have officially left and joined other conferences. There's 4 remaining, but the Pac-12 as we know it is essentially gone forever. So how did we get to this point, and what are the sales lessons that we can learn from this? Well, it's interesting because if you go back to 2009, the Pac-12 hired a new conference commissioner to lead the conference. His name was Larry Scott. And it's interesting because the first couple years of Larry Scott's administration, he had some big successes, some big wins. What happened? Well, the first year he goes out and he tries to expand the conference, and he nearly pulled in 2 huge schools, Texas and Oklahoma. Those are big schools renowned for their athletics. That would have changed the landscape of college football clear back 13, 14 years ago. It didn't happen, but he still added 2 important schools, Colorado and Utah. And he was praised for that. And then just a year later, in early 2011, he closed a massive media deal. At the time, it was the biggest media deal that college sports had ever seen. It was worth $250 million a year. Now, that was surpassed shortly thereafter, but at the time, Larry Scott was considered like a brilliant deal maker. In fact, I remember a lot of radio personalities talking about him and just praising him and discussing how, wow, this is a new era of college sports and Larry Scott's the guy. I mean, he had a couple of big wins early in his tenure. But then slowly he made some poor decisions. What did he do? He moved the conference headquarters to some expensive office space in downtown San Francisco, probably one of the most expensive places to have an office anywhere in the United States. He also started the Pac-12 network. And this was kind of an eyebrow-raising move because it had been done before in other conferences and not really succeeded too well. And Larry Scott wanted to do it by himself without a partner. So even at the time, 10, 12 years ago, people were kind of raising their eyebrows. But again, he'd just come off a couple of big successes. And so he was given a long leash. He was given a lot of leeway. Well, it turns out that was a disastrous decision. A lot of people couldn't find their team on the Pac-12 network because it didn't get any distribution. And this really was a problem for the conference for many years to come. Slowly, his reputation eroded over time, and finally, it was plainly obvious to everyone he was dismissed in 2021, but probably about 5 years too late. Now, there's a couple of lessons here. First of all is a general sales lesson, and that is, hey, a lot of times after you score a big deal, you win a big project, it's hard to pivot back and go back to the grind and make the calls, do the prospecting. Sometimes those bad habits form after a big deal. You get fat and happy, you get complacent. Larry Scott has that big media deal and then maybe rests on his laurels and starts working on a project with moving the conference headquarters and starting this network and not really focusing on what made those successes in the first place. So that's one lesson, and I think a lot of salespeople know that, is you can't get fat and happy, you can't get complacent after a big deal. But here's the other one, and this is an important one for sales managers. Sales managers fall into the trap of heaping a lot of praise on our top dogs on our best salespeople. We praise them and then we give them a lot of leeway and latitude. We let them do what they want because, hey, they're bringing in the big deals. And too often that can lead to disaster. In the case of Larry Scott, the Pac-12 presidents were overseeing him. And he had, for such a long period of time, a long leash. He could do whatever he wanted. And he had a lot of allies that assumed, hey, he's a brilliant deal maker. That Pac-12 network, that's going to work out. Larry Scott's brilliant. Look what he did. Well, that lasted way too long. And I've seen that in sales before where sales managers allow their top dogs, allow their best sales representatives to go way too long without any oversight. And again, it's not just that the salespeople get complacent, it's the managers aren't paying attention and they're getting complacent too. They're letting the top salespeople get away with too much. And that can lead to disaster, just as it did with the Pac-12. So therein lies a lesson for both salespeople and sales managers. You've got to watch yourself and make sure that those bad habits don't form after you win a big deal. You've got to go back and do the hard work. It's tough to make that pivot, but you also have to be accountable. If you are a sales manager, you've got to have your top sales guys be accountable, even if they're bringing home the big deals and making a lot of money for the company. You have to have them be accountable. You can't be complacent in your management. So there's a lesson for you.